Hey there. Hello. Hello.
So, Alden, I believe, right?
Yeah,
Bolden?
can you hear me well?
I can hear you just fine. How
Oh,
about
yeah,
you? Can you hear
perfect.
me?
Yes, excellent. Everything is pretty nice. Let me start on a gratitude note. I'm unbelievably happy that you've agreed to my rather, let's call it a suspicious offer. You have been probably the only person from that community that actually agreed, and it's very nice of you. I truly appreciate it. I remain hopeful that the electricity situation in my country will kindly allow us to extend this fantastic conversation a little bit longer. So let's see. Yeah, but let me apologize in advance if I do disappear. I'd
I
really like
understand.
to continue it once I'm back,
I,
if I
I
may
I
do it.
know I know what's going on over there, so
Yeah.
I completely understand what I've never been through a war in my country. I'm blessed to
Yeah.
be in the U.S., but
Yeah.
um, yeah, it's rough. So
Yes, pretty
yeah,
rough.
I
It's pretty
understand.
rough. It's been rougher. Currently, I am happy to say that it's getting a little bit easier, at least for for civilians like myself. But still, a big part of unpredictability is a part of daily life, unfortunately. Yeah. Well, nonetheless, you know what I would really like to start by. When I posted that message, people have not been too, let's say, open-minded about that. Would you say, you as a, let's say, a seasoned practitioner of lucid dream, would that be fair to say?
I
You,
I think that at this point that would be pretty fair. Yes.
yeah. So you as a experienced practitioner, would you say lucid dreams as an activity, as a happening, is getting more or less popularity?
I honestly don't know how to answer that question, mainly because I engage a lot online, mostly in lucid dream communities. Obviously, lucid dreaming is very popular on the Discord servers. I'm an admin on the Dream Cafe Discord, which is the largest lucid dreaming server. I've been there for about 2 years now, two and a half, maybe about 2 years and 3 months or so.
Yeah.
I'm on OmniLucid, it's another Discord. I joined the subreddit on December 16th, so
You've been
just a
pretty
little bit
active
over a
in
month
this,
ago.
right, online?
I've been very active
Yeah.
in just a month.
Wow.
I've got it's crazy, but all I do is comment. I haven't actually made a post of my own yet. I just
Huh.
comment, but
Right.
I've been very active. But in terms of talking to people in the day to day, I will bring up lucid dreaming a lot. And so, like when I travel, if I sit next to somebody on the plane or bus, I'll be like, have you ever heard of lucid dreaming? You know what it is? I'll talk to someone at school. Do you know what it is? And they'll be like, I've heard of it. Some people will be like, never heard of it. I'll be
Wow.
a decent like,
Really?
well
You
then
still
so,
bump into people like that who've never heard about it?
well, of course, it's a very
Huh.
niche thing. I bumped into many people who have never heard of lucid dreaming. Heck, my own parents didn't even know what lucid dreaming was until I told
Wow.
them.
Yeah,
And
it's not
so
like it never happened to them. They've just not been able to categorize it, I guess, right?
also like dream recall isn't something that they really do much with either. So that's a lot of people. Keep in mind, a lot of people don't remember many dreams and think they don't actually dream when they're dreaming 4 to 6 times every night.
Right.
I thought
Right.
before I started lucid dreaming, I thought it was normal to dream every single day because that was just what I did and to remember those dreams. And then I learned that a lot of people don't remember dreams. I'm just like, dang, I thought this was normal.
Right. Right.
So,
Yeah.
but moving on from that, what going on the spectrum, okay, it's just talking to people in random places, okay? So anywhere from amusement parks to cities to my university to places, there'll be people who've never heard of lucid dreaming. There will be people who have heard of it but don't know what it means. There'll be people who have heard of it but have incorrectly defined it, like say it's about controlling your dreams. That's actually a lot of people who've heard about lucid dreaming will incorrectly misdefine it as controlling your dreams or being in control of your dreams. And then there are people who have heard of it and know what it is. And then there are people who have studied it.
Wow.
And so in these
Yeah.
categories of people, from what I found, it's more likely, in terms of the likelihood of someone to know what lucid dreaming is, from my personal experience, younger people are more likely to have heard of it at some point than older people.
And why do you think that is? Why such a age correlation, would you say?
Well, there are a lot of like quote unquote new age kind of things, a lot of this like spirituality kind of
Right.
stuff. Now, lucid dreaming is often associated with that kind of stuff, but not everyone who lucid dreams is a spiritual person. I'm not. I'm a highly analytical person. I'm very analytical. If you read my comments, you would have seen the analytical side of me because
I
it's
must
on
confess I
display.
have not paid enough attention to your comments. I do know you've got a YouTube channel though, right?
Yeah, yes, I actually do, and I'm pretty analytical there too. Actually, if you've heard anything there, but Yeah, I comment on like 25 posts a day on Reddit.
Wow,
Like it's
look at
ridiculous.
that.
I was, in fact, what I was doing, I was waiting on you, was commenting on a bunch of Reddit posts.
Really? Okay.
That's why I have almost 4,000 karma now. It's
Wow.
ridiculous.
Yeah, yeah.
It's
4,000 in how long? What was the time reference?
About, let's see, 31, 35 days now.
That's crazy. I think I've been on Reddit for a couple of years. I've got what, 2.8 karma or something like. I don't know. I don't know if that's a lot or little.
It depends, honestly, on how active you are. I'm just commenting a lot. But basically what I'm trying to say is, some people will associate that with like the new age spirituality thing, and we'll hear about it through the context of that kind of thing. And that is more popular among the younger generations, among like the millennials and the Gen Zs and all that kind of stuff. That is more popular among the younger generations. And also, as the internet is evolved, the people who are most likely to use the internet are, of course, younger people. And topics like this, tend to be attractive to younger people. If you look at, even the misinformation sources, like if you look at those, the people that get attracted to that information are younger people. Like the YouTube channels that are really not a very good place to learn lucid dreaming, it's a lot of really young people, a lot of 12-year-old, 13-year-old people are watching those videos and are hearing about lucid dreaming. So there's a lot of young people that are doing this. There are some older people. Like I'll run into someone who's, I've been doing this for 40 years. Like, cool.
Wow.
Well, you're in the minority.
Wow. Yeah, in definite minority for sure. Yeah. I wonder how successful the person has got over 40 years.
Oh, I've done a few people, like there are only a couple of people I think I've interacted with on the subreddit who have done that for that long, and from what I've been able to tell, they're pretty successful at it. And I've heard of some other people from Dreamviews who have been able to get very successful at it. And I've talked to most people I've talked to are older than me. The people who taught me, people like like Sensei and
so you have resorted to help of some other people who've more experience.
Of course, actually, if you want to discuss how I actually learned lucid dreaming, I can get into.
Yeah, sure, we'll get there. We'll get there if the blackout doesn't interrupt us. For sure, it's one of the most important, actually, the juiciest topics for the conversation.
Oh, great. Well, I've got some juice I can share on that.
Oh,
so
yeah, for sure. Now, would you also agree with the assessment that lucid dreams as a topic gets amazingly misinterpreted and perhaps even judged, misrepresented sometimes?
Only about like 80% of the time or so.
Yeah.
Yes, very much so. It is misinterpreted out the wazoo. In fact, I think there's a general misunderstanding of the concept. I mean, there are several issues here. Okay, so the limited research. If you look at lucid dreaming studies, research studies, there maybe are a few hundred dream studies, like research studies that have been done with lucid dreaming. You might think, oh, well, that's a good number. And then you look at the medical field, and there's several hundred thousand research studies that have been done.
For sure.
And that gives you some perspective on just how understudied the field of lucid dreaming actually is.
Who's on the forefront, you think, of studying lucid dreams? Do you know any names?
Oh, I know many. I was just at the International Dream Conference. Let's see. There's there's these labs at Northwestern University. Dr. Ken Poller, I believe, runs those. Karen Conkley, she's a graduate student there. She does a lot of this. She does a lot of sleep studies there. They're very much on the cutting edge.
Oh, that's great. That's great.
Of that. Then there's Dr. Martin Dressler in Nijmegen, the Netherlands. Nijmegen. I'm pretty sure I'm pronouncing that correctly because I learned from someone who's from the Netherlands. Their sleep lab over there, the Donders Institute, that is on the forefront as well. There is a lab in Montreal where Claudia Picard-Deland is there. There's also one in Italy, and there are people like Dr. Benjamin Baird, who I believe is at UT Austin now, and there's people like Dr. Nathan W. I forget his last name. I think he's at MIT now. But there's a lot of researchers, just those that I've met personally and that I've heard about and that I know. Like I've met every single one of these people personally.
Oh wow! Look at you. Wow.
Just in July when I went to the International Dream Conference.
Great. See, my active phase of researches and kind of studying of lucid dream ended up with the name like Stephen Laberge, French one. Yeah, you're familiar with that one for sure.
He's actually not French. He is American.
Oh, is he? I'm judging by the surname.
Stanford. He has a French name, but like for example, my last name, I won't say my last name publicly. Yeah, because I'm not. You're really a public person. I'm okay with my first name. I'm Ryan. Yeah. But I won't give out my last name usually. But it's almost like a French British sounding name. My family has been in America for 200 years or more. So
Right. And is that guy still around? Is he still doing it?
I met him.
You did?
Met him.
Look at you.
I can tell you exactly where I was
Please.
when I met him.
I'd like to hear that. Because he's a sort of a OG, right, in lucid dreaming, really.
He is. And he's also a really good presenter. He's hilarious. He gave, even when he presented his keynote, I had heard all of this before because I read Explore the World Lucid Dreaming, and most of what he said came right out of that book. Also, I've heard this online. I've heard everything he's basically said. And it was still a good presentation. Right.
Even
though I knew everything.
Just because of how he acts, how he presents with his charisma.
It was spoiler rich. I knew everything he was going to say almost. And even though I knew what he was going to say, it was still an enjoyable presentation. Because just because of his mannerisms, it's great.
Yeah.
He did this one thing that was really, really funny. Honestly, I got to tell you this because I had heard him do this in a video. And I told him after his symposium, this was Monday, the day before he did his keynote. He did his keynote on Tuesday, that was the 19th, and he did the symposium on Monday, the 18th, and I talked to him on both days. It was really cool. Wow. And I was telling him about how I remembered him doing this thing where he had everyone try to close their eyes and point at the door that they walked in from and point at him.
As a way of testing reality, I suppose?
No, not a way of testing reality. It's more of like a way of testing like people's awareness.
Right. Consciousness,
people's
right.
memory of, like, know where they came in and know where he is. Well, what he actually did during that, and here's the thing, like, because I said, have you ever done that with a blind person in the room? Because I'm the only blind person there. Right. So he actually did it. That I was like, somebody was telling me this, and then he actually did it. But it was really funny because what he did is when he had everyone close their eyes and try to point, he then gets off the stage and walks over.
Wow.
And I can hear him move off the stage, and I was like, kind of it's hilarious. It is hilarious.
You've got to be a good presenter, undeniably, in order to attract people's attention, especially in a topic like that. Now, what about his methods, actually? Would you define his methods, precisely what exactly they are, and maybe if you've used them? I'm sure you have used them, right? I'm sure you've been successfully using his methods.
I used mild.
Yeah.
Let me think for a minute.
Mild.
I think I've used mild about, let's see, every day since sometime mid-October 2020.
What would mild be? Is it some sort of ways of checking your realities? If I'm not mistaken, correct me if I'm wrong. What's mild?
Mild stands for the mnemonic induction of lucid dreams. And it is a technique. Do you know what perspective, memory, or intention is?
I'm afraid I don't want to suppose. I don't want to embarrass myself.
Okay, well, so have you ever decided to do something in the future?
Yeah, sure, I believe so.
Okay, so you remember how you decided last week that you wanted to do this interview?
Yes.
And you set up a date and a time to do it?
Right.
Right, you set an intention to do this. I set an intention to be here at 4 o'clock. You set an intention to be here at 4 o'clock. That's what an intention is. It is an active, present decision to perform a future action, usually associated with some form of trigger. So you decided, I'm going to do this interview at 4 o'clock on Saturday. Well, that's my time. Now, your time, it's more like 9 o'clock. But... Or 10 o'clock, rather. It's more like 11. I think is it 11 o'clock?
Currently is nearly a midnight. Yeah, it's 4 to midnight.
It's nearly 24. Yeah, it's because it's almost 5 here, so it's nearly 24. Or on 00 hours over there.
I got it. And by that way, you've got to do some associations with certain triggers in reality that can provoke.
Well, this is just the baseline example. So I wanted to make sure you knew what an intention was. This is actually nothing to do with reality testing. Okay. So I want you to put reality testing out of your mind, for example, for a minute, because this is different. All right. Reality testing, or state testing, as it's called, it's generally not seen as a much of a way of an effective technique. It's a tool, not really a technique. It's a way you can confirm whether or not you're dreaming. But just going into mild, because I want to go through the steps, I actually probably teach mild a few times a day, every single day on here, as well as on Discord. All right, so mild is you start by making that decision. You're going to know that you're dreaming while you are dreaming, or when you're next dreaming, you're going to recognize or notice that you are dreaming. So you have this decision that you've made. Now, what's really critical with mild is your dream recall. How many dreams you're remembering each night and how well you're remembering these dreams. Those are quantitative and qualitative sides of dream recall. The quantitative is how many dreams you remember, because we usually dream around 4 to 6 times a night. And the qualitative is like how much detail are you remembering from those dreams. Now with mild, it's kind of more like the qualitative aspect. You're going through a dream that you have remembered. Now you're going through this dream from beginning to end after you've made this decision that I just mentioned. And you're looking for dream signs. Now dream signs are anything out of place in any way. For example, I was in the city of New York City, and I haven't been to that city since 2019, and I was standing on a subway platform in the middle of Manhattan, except it was elevated. All right, well, none of the platforms in Manhattan are elevated. I shouldn't be in the city because I'm not supposed to be there. These are all dream signs. All I'm with people I don't know. Right, there's a dream sign. All right, so dream signs anything out of place. So you go through the whole dream, you find dream signs. Then you pick a point in the dream and you do what's called rescripting the dream. Basically, what this means is you're changing the rest of the dream. You pick a point and everything before that point is the same, and then everything afterwards you change. And you pick a point where you found the dream sign and you imagine that you realized it was a dream sign and you got lucid. You know that you were dreaming. Now what you do is you go through the rest of that dream imagining what you would have done had you been lucid in that dream.
Purely in your imagination, right? You at this stage you just imagine.
So what you do is you go through, at this stage, you go through your dream goals, you go through anything you would want to do in that state, and then what you do is repetition here. You repeat that rescripted version of the dream from the beginning to end. So as it was in the beginning, up to where you recognize the dream sign, you scripted it, and you repeat that rescripted version of the dream. And you do this until you feel like your intention is set. Like you are confident that you set the intention you're going to notice that you're dreaming when you're next dreaming, and then you just remind yourself of that and you go to bed. That's what mild is. You can do this before sleep and you can do this during the night.
Nice. Yeah. Is there any timeline, an average period of time over a person gets truly successful doing this thing?
It really honestly varies. So here's the thing. Lucid dreaming is skill training, and people learn different skills at different rates. Someone might do a technique like this and get some beginner's luck or just take to it really well, and you could get lucid that night. That's not very likely. Just like you can buy a lottery ticket, you can win, but it's not very likely. It could take you as long as several months to get results. This is the other extreme. And for a lot of people, it's probably a couple weeks to a month or so. It is recommended when you're doing techniques to be consistent and to practice consistently for a decent period of time. What a lot of beginner lucid dreamers fail to realize is the skill aspect. And so they'll do a technique for a day, or maybe they'll do a technique for 3 days, or maybe they'll do a technique
and they switch to another one.
So they're not actually realizing, the full effectiveness of a technique.
It was exactly my mistake when I only started. Exactly. Every other night, another thing. Exactly. Never concentrate on one thing for a long time.
It's recommended to practice a technique consistently for around a month before switching.
Right.
Because this is skill training. It would be like, imagine if you tried to play, football is soccer in Europe. And so I'll just use that example. So imagine you're trying to play football. And then after 2 days of practicing football, you start practicing tennis. And after 2 days of practicing tennis, you start practicing hockey.
Yeah, pointless, right? Useless.
Yep.
Pretty much. Yeah, crazy. That was exactly my mistake, and it's wild how I was never able to realize my mistake. It was crazy. I was a pretty young age, and I guess was not as analytical as you present yourself to be. And being analytical is an absolute must-have for things like that.
And here's the thing, though. Even someone analytical like me can make the exact same mistake. I'm not above making these mistakes. I made these mistakes as a beginner myself, and the reason for that is the way lucid dreaming is taught. It is, and the problem is that misinformation. We discussed the inaccurate sources of information, how lucid dreaming is misinterpreted. And this is key because in a lot of online places, lucid dreaming is misinterpreted. It's treated as a form of instant gratification. This is what people are looking for, and this is actually, if I may say so, this is a reflection on just the Western culture in general right now. People are looking for immediate gratification, for instant fulfillment. And what people fail to realize is the skill aspect. And it's I've made this comment too in a few places when I've been talking to people about teaching lucid dreaming. There's the responsibility of the learner to actually try to research and learn information about what they're learning. And there's the responsibility of the teacher to make sure that what they are teaching is accurate. And the teacher responsibility has gone by the wayside in a lot of places because people basically, have you heard, you know the game of telephone?
I'm not exactly sure.
Y'all have that in Ukraine? All right, so the game of telephone, this is a game that kids play, and it kind of teaches you about like secondhand information.
So like one person tells you one thing, then you retell it to another person, and by the end,
you tell it all the way around the circle, and then when it gets back, it's restored.
Totally different. Right.
So what happens is a kind of perverse game of telephone here. So you have an original technique like mild from Explore the Lucid Dreaming. All right, and the way LaBerge actually recommended it, Dr. Stephen LaBerge, is a little bit different than how I recommended it because the technique has actually evolved. I actually, kind of fashioned my recommendations a little bit more like Dr. Kristen Lamarca's mild recommendations. You can find those on mindfulluciddreaming.com. That's her website. I'm not plugging myself, so I have no shame in plugging that. And I will say that his recommendations, involve, doing it until you fall asleep and mostly doing it during wake back to bed. And also it talks about repeating while you're doing the imagination process, kind of repeating that intention to yourself. And what people did with that, okay, is they took the repeat this like kind of intention to yourself thing out of the book. They took it out of context. They left the rest of the technique behind. They said mild is all about repeating mantras to yourself.
Yeah, that's taken really out of context.
And then what happens is, okay, so this is how it gets started. Okay, so it gets started on some platforms. People start posting stuff like that. They misinterpret technique. People who are trying to make YouTube videos are researching the bare minimum, okay? And the bare minimum in an under-researched topic is going to get you the bare minimum.
And then YouTube Shorts roll in, right? TikTok rolls in.
I'm not even talking about Shorts, okay? Yeah. Shorts rolled in a couple years ago. I'm talking more like a decade ago.
Okay.
So the older days of lucid dreaming, elder days before I even started. So what would happen is some YouTubers would do the basic level stuff and would think they knew what they were talking about, but what they had actually learned was incorrect. Then they would spread it. And then other people coming along later would research and they would use what they had heard, and everyone's saying the same thing and it's all incorrect. And that's how you get this massive amounts of incorrect information out there.
Yeah, and it piles on and gets misrepresented. It's exactly like a broken phone. And also I would imagine, at least it's partly might be connected to the fact that it's every night. You've got sleeping every night, so a lot of people are just, I think, naturally impatient. They want to try more and more every next night. They don't gotta wait for the weekend. Although, would you say in terms of frequency of practice, is it better to practice it every night or wait before Friday evening?
I would say practice as often as you can, because imagine like if you were learning a sport, and you only practice, or say you're learning a musical instrument. You ever played a musical instrument?
I do, yeah. I've got a beautiful guitar standing in the corner of my room, yeah.
When you were learning guitar, how often did you practice?
Oh, unfortunately not as often as I wished, but I surely should have.
How did that,
not good,
not
good,
practicing as
certainly
often
not good,
affect your learning of that skill?
Yeah, well, had that been a little bit more frequent, surely I would have achieved more success, I believe. Okay,
so when you're applying this to skill training, of course, when it comes to practice, practicing as you feel comfortable doing, but it works the same way. The more you practice consistently, the more likely you are going to be to have results. If you only practice occasionally, the best you're going to get is occasional results. That's how it works. And it's not just lucid dreaming, it's any skill that works this way.
The counter-argument to that might be rather broken sleeping pattern, the necessity to wake up early, having a hard work day in front of you, the kind of stuff that people point out to.
I actually answer that a lot. Like people say, well, I don't have any time. And it's like, you don't have 15 minutes.
Yeah.
You don't have 15 minutes in the morning to wake up, to do dream delving, to journal your dreams. You don't have 15 minutes before bed to do something like mild. You don't have any time. Like, and what it is what it really comes down to actually for a lot of people is time management. Because there'll be people who are browsing Reddit for like 2 hours saying, I don't have any time to lucid dreams. Like,
absolutely.
Well, what are you doing right now? You're on Reddit. Like, what are you doing? You're on Discord. What are you doing right now?
Right.
And so it comes down to time management. Now, here's the other thing, because I will address both sides of this too, because obviously the more consistently you practice, the better your results can be. On the counter side, what you don't want to do is stress. You don't want to worry about results.
I got stressed as hell last time I was actively practicing.
When you get stressed over results, not only can stress impact dreaming and lucid dreaming, but stress is just overall it's negative. It's a net negative. It's not great. And so stressing over something that you don't need to stress over can actually be counterintuitive. It can make it harder for you to get results. And so the goal here is to practice consistently, but not worry about the results. Just do the practice consistently and try not to stress over it. I think that's where the balance is. The more consistently you practice, the more you stress over it. There are certain things that are recommended maybe not to do all the time. Like, it really depends. This comes down to your definition of wake back to beds, because some people say like you only do wake back to beds a couple times a week. Well, also the classical definition of wake back to bed is what I would call like a classical sleep interruption. That's where you're staying awake for 30 to 90 minutes. Well, if you're staying awake for an hour each night, of course that's going to cause some issues. But if you're only staying awake for 5 minutes, that's a little different. And so it really all depends on a few things. It depends on A, how long you stay awake. B, how long you can fall asleep. Like, how long does it take to fall asleep? Does it take you 5 minutes? Does it take you 30? Because that's really going to change, how often you should intentionally try to wake up.
And surely, once again, your ability to analyze all those aspects and take them all into consideration, right? Which might be an issue for some people.
That's why I try to kind of break it down somewhat like that. I think breaking some of this down helps a lot. And understanding sort of like how this stuff works. That's why wild isn't a one-size-fits-all technique, because what one person does if they fall asleep quickly and they're a deep sleeper is going to be way too much for someone who's a light sleeper and actually needs to not be that aware in the same way.
Correct. Now, and it's certainly pretty hard not to overstress at times, considering how much is at the stake, because if you really take into consideration the endless opportunities that lucid dream gives you, and
when you say how much is at stake, when we say how much is at stake here, that implies a net negative, okay? And so it'd be like, how much is at stake for not doing, you know, your work at your job, for example, like at stake you could get fired. I mean, there's a negative implied consequences. If you don't do this, then this negative consequence results.
You got to be all right with failing, I think, in the first place.
Now here's the thing: with failing at lucid dream, you're learning to do something. A failure should be expected. I mean, you're going to fail most of the time. Here's the 100%. Thing: even a nightly lucid dreamer, if you get one lucid dream every night, you're still failing to get lucid in at least 5 other dreams every single night.
And even in that lucid dream, a lot of things might go wrong, right? A lot of things may not go as you wish them to go. And most likely in a dream, something does go like that. Would you also agree dreams in general tend to have their own sort of set of physics? I have experienced certain like...
Well, actually, I don't break down things separately in dreams, okay? I created, like, I've come up with the way I understand dreams to work. And I feel like this is accurate. I really want to discuss this in more depth with some people who study this. But from my understanding, from my own experience, and from what I've known about memory and dreams, do you know what? So basically, in dreams, what happens is based on your perceptions. There's no stable external reference to anything. So yeah, physics can be glitchy, kind of be weird. You can also make them into whatever you want them to be. But it's about how you're perceiving things. What I like to say is your strongest associations combined with your emotions at any given moment. For example, if I was dreaming right now and I perceived you as being some sort of evil person, then you'd probably have a dream about, you know, you attacking me. But if I perceived you as, that's just my dad leaving through the garage, he's supposed to be picking up my medications, he might be coming home. But if I perceived you as, you know, friendly or helpful, I'd be more likely to have that kind of experience. And it's about how, you know, you emotionally react to something. If you're scared, you'll probably get something scary. I mean, emotions tend to be reflected in dreams. But like going back to the overstressing thing and all that, it's like, you know, there is no need to really stress over that, because again, when you're failing, that should be expected, and there's no real loss for failing, because what else are you going to do? I mean, you're already not getting lucid already, and so all that is happening is the status quo, and so nothing is really changing in that front. And I think kind of just trying to work out, you know, why is someone, because I've talked to people who have been stressed out and not getting results for a long time, and that stress really is harmful.
Are there any people who you would say naturally totally incapable of lucid dreaming?
Yes, there are a couple of people. There are specific disorders, I don't remember the names now, but there are specific disorders that deal with not getting REM sleep or that deal with not dreaming. Unless you're diagnosed with one of those medical disorders, no. But if you're...
Everybody else on the healthy spectrum is pretty much a question of practice, right? Of, I guess, how...
Yeah, and there's a combination of natural ability and practice. Everyone is different.
Yeah, that does give hope to a lot of people, right? Especially once they truly recognize the endless potential, of which I would actually like to talk a little bit. With you personally, what benefit has it given to your life?
Oh, it's given me a lot. One, I've always enjoyed my dreams, but now I have like a new perspective on them, because I love imagining things and I love playing things out in my imagination. And now when I'm actually dreaming, I can do things. I've been able to visit places that I would never be able to go to just because I can't afford to. Like
the real ones or purely imaginary?
Both. I've been to Japan in dreams, which I really want to go to. I've been to space. I've been to a lot of interesting places. I like to have fun and I kind of trolled people a few times. I just like to. I love irony. I love just, you know, having fun experiences. I have like suspense dreams that are still fun in the end, like solving a mystery or doing something. I had, and my dream recall just improved overall. And then there were like times where I thought like, okay, well, I won't be able to visit this place when I go here in real life, so I'll just do this in a dream. And I was like, yeah, this is fun. So
has that perhaps anyhow taught you any skill or helped you to fight with something?
A few things. Like actually, one, it's helped me with a lot of things. Because hold on one second.
Sure. Yes.
I don't know how to read this. Hold on.
Yep.
Hold up here. All right. Sorry about that.
That's fine. Yeah,
My
so
apologies.
about getting taught some skill or helping to overcome something with the help of your
Well,
lucid dreams.
lucid dreaming has actually helped me with a few things. Like, just starting off, 2020 was probably the worst year of my life. I've been dealing with like anxiety related to being at university for the past couple of years. I've been in therapy for a bit. Then COVID happened, and COVID basically said, "You know what? F you." That was
Yeah,
like
yeah,
COVID.
yeah.
My favorite things to do involve traveling, being around people, and not being cooped up at home.
That's pretty
And
much everything
I
COVID taken
I
from
spent
us.
the entire year with nothing, without being
Sure.
able to do the things that I actually enjoyed doing, being deprived of all of that, and just being left with my own worries for all of that year. Like, how is this year going to go? I can't do any of these kinds of things. Then October 2020 came around, and I was still dealing with school. I was like, I'm doing all this stuff, and I'm feeling overwhelmed with it, and I'm worried about it. And then I discovered lucid dreaming. I was like, this sounds really, really cool as hell. And then I was like, I took a break. There goes that garage door. Oh, that's loud.
No, it's
But
fine.
I'm just gonna wait for it to stop so it doesn't affect the recording.
No, it's fine. You shouldn't worry about it. That's
There
all
it
right.
goes. But yeah, I've had this happen on live streams before. It's kind of a pain. But anyway,
So
basically,
it dates back to 2020, right?
well,
That's
yeah,
really the year.
I was getting there. I'm pretty good
Yeah.
at finding my spots. But so basically, October 2020. In fact, I remember the day I started. The day I started practicing was Thursday, October 15th, 2020. That was day one, night one. In fact, today is day 829, and yes, last night was night 828. So I actually keep track of that. My weeks start on Thursdays and end on Wednesdays, and so last Wednesday was 826. That was 118 weeks of practice. So you see how this goes. So I'm in my 119th week of practicing lucid dreaming. I love counting. But basically, when I started, I was in a really, really low place. I discovered this thing. I was like, this sounds really, really cool. Of course, I learned like the misinformation stuff first, and I learned it from not a great sources. But I'm like, I already am really good at imagining things. I remember dreams. Like, this is cool. I'd really love to do this. And I got on the Discords. I found a communities of people who are learning to do this. And I was like, this is amazing. I developed a passion for lucid dreaming like I'd never had a passion for anything else before. Like, I've had some passions for some things, but not to the extent of lucid dreaming. Not where I'd be willing to dedicate over 2 years of my life to teaching other people how to do it. No, I had never had a passion like this in my life. It changed my life. I got a stable sleep schedule because I valued dreaming. My mental health was just overall better because I had people that I had community. I belonged somewhere. I had this community of lucid dreamers where I was involved in teaching people. I was learning with people. I belonged in this place. I'm kind of in their place on Reddit. I mean, it is really gratifying to be able to teach people and then to have those people actually get results and to be able to help people off of this. I've always taken pleasure from helping other people. I've always been that way, and just help people learn something that I'm very passionate about has just been another level for me. But it's always been there now, and I started learning it. I started learning how to do it for real. I'm like, this makes a lot of sense. I'm very logical, and it made a lot of logical sense. And then I started discovering like my own issues with dream control, like anxiety based, and I started realizing how I could deal with that in dreams in terms of like trying to just calm myself down for a bit, and kind of realized how I could do that. And then of course I can rehearse problems in dreams. Not really, I haven't really done that a lot in dreams. I do that a lot more during waking visualizations. Actually, I will just imagine being somewhere, and I will imagine how an interaction can go in a variety of scenarios. Like, I'll just work through those scenarios, and I'll do this for real life things. Like, I had an issue where I was connecting on my flight to Tucson, and I was like, okay, well, I only have 15 minutes to connect. I started plotting out actual scenarios for how this connection could go, and I started thinking about what I could do to make my opportunities better. And so I actually came up with solutions to the problems I was having just by visualizing them all the way.
Right.
And it's one of those things you can do with mild. That's one of those things you can do in dreams, but I just do it all the way, and it actually helps a lot.
A lot of
But
successful people, sportsmen, report using it.
Yeah, for me, lucid dreaming has basically just become a passion. It's a skill that I enjoy. It's the way I have fun in the same sense that other people play video games to have fun. It's like one of those things. But I enjoy teaching people about it. I love the science of it too. I'm a very curious person by nature, and I love like figuring out how things work. And so I learned how perception influences dreams, how dream control works, how all this stuff works on the fundamental level, so I can actually teach other people about it. It's a lot of fun.
Do you literally have students? Do you run like students? And if yes, how many would you say?
I get paid a grand total of $0.00
Right.
a year.
Yeah.
That is my salary.
Yeah.
I
So
don't
it's
have students in the way you would imagine.
right.
I am on Discord. I am on forums. I teach a lot of people, but I don't have quote unquote clients. I don't have people who actually sign up to take courses with me. No,
Right.
I'm just an ever present menace to everyone. No, I'm just there.
Yeah,
teaching.
I think you
But
could have a potential considering your experience and
I
passion.
teach people the way, almost kind of the way I was taught. Like is this a good time I can go into how I actually learned?
Yeah, absolutely, sure. So far, I'm good. I've got the lights.
All right, the way I learned is actually really, kind of determinative. It really shaped how I did things. I kind of learned through an apprenticeship model. So I started off with the bad info until I finally started questioning, okay, because I've read Exploring the World of Lucid Dreaming, which if you haven't read it, do read it.
Right.
And I learned what mild was correctly, and I was like, this isn't what YouTube was saying, this isn't what that said, this is what that's saying, this is the person who made it, who's right, and no one could answer that question, because this was back in the day when no one on the server knew what the hell they were talking about. No one could answer that question, no one. Then I finally met some people who could answer that question, and who could help me learn lucid dreaming, and I've only learned from those specific people ever since. There was this guy, Sensei, who's about, 4 or 5 years older than me now, I think. And he taught me a lot. He'd been doing it for 8 years. He taught me a lot. And what I would do is when I was exploring these concepts, I was quickly seen as someone who was learning quickly, and they invited me into this group of, most of them who were just advanced lucid dreamers. And so for early on, I ended up in this group where we were basically discussing lucid dreaming almost academically in terms of bouncing ideas off each other, questioning ideas, trying to figure out how things worked. And I did a lot of exploring in that community and bouncing ideas off of people. And that's basically how I learned. I learned by sort of apprenticing, by reading guides, things that other people had written, by discussing these concepts with other people, by coming up with ideas, thinking about how this stuff worked. And that's how I learned how to lucid dream, just in this group of advanced people, to the point where now I have a better understanding for it. And my understanding has sort of grown and evolved over time. And it was really cool to look back. I did this like last year, mid-year. I looked back at some of the things I said in like January of 2021. I was like, damn, I mean, this stuff's still relevant today.
Wow.
But that's how I learned. And I do, because I don't have a traditional academic education. So I don't have a degree in lucid dreaming. I don't have a university degree in psychology. I kind of learned from doing, in terms of like how dreams work in lucid dreaming. I've learned from doing. I've learned from listening to other people. I'm one of those people who actually takes in information quickly. And so I've learned by sort of apprenticing, and that's kind of how I learned how things work, and that's how I learned how.
Do you get it every night?
Basically, yes.
Yeah. Wow. Do you have any plans for what you're gonna do once you're there? Do you write like scenarios to be prepared, or do you?
I think about certain things I want to do.
Yeah.
In fact, one of the things I'm doing right now is I've been experimenting on myself with incorporating audio in dreams, because I had it happen by accident, but I want to be able to do it on purpose just in case I could ever use that as a skill. And what I was doing was trying to experiment with my ability to change my perceptions of incorporated content. So we're talking about incorporating external content into a dream without waking up, and then trying to manipulate how I perceive that content. And my most successful result happened sometime last week. Let me see if I can pull up the exact date, actually. Let me see. I need to go to my Lucid log. I have an Excel spreadsheet, by the way. I have logged now. Let me just pull this up.
So it's like a diary, right, in a way?
No, this is an Excel sheet. It has dates, approximate times, approximate lengths, date, and night and day since I began practicing.
Do you write exactly what happened in a dream?
As much as I can remember. It's sometimes a little sanitized. If there are any details I don't want to share, I treat this as a document that I could make public. And so my dream journals aren't treated privately. I write things in the context that I could end up sharing these with other people. And so it's almost a long-term project, to the point where if I have something that can be ready-made to be shared. I have shared this document before. I have recorded 772 entries. The last entry was on January 20th. That was yesterday. I need to go through my dreams. I don't know if I got lucid last night. I'm just thinking I got a recall from something, but I'm not really sure.
The time span after you woke up is pretty short, right? How long you can remember actually what had happened?
It really varies. Okay, so for example, I only remember like really one main dream when I woke up. However, I was listening to a country song about an hour and a half ago, or 2 hours ago, and I, just the part, I knew some lyrics were going to come up, and that associated with concept from another dream, and so I just remember something throughout the day. Here we go.
Yeah, well,
Oh, here we go. The best audio incorporation experiment result that I got was Lucid Dream number 767 on January 15th, 2023. And that was, let me see, it says 20th. That was, I believe, Sunday. Yeah, that was last Sunday, the 15th. Because Martin Luther King Day was the 16th, so and 20th was yesterday. So yeah, that was on last Sunday. That was a week before tomorrow. So 6 days ago. It was sometime between 8:45 and 8:59 a.m. And the reason why the timing is specific is because I checked the time right after I woke up. And that was night 8:22 and day 8:23 since I started practicing. And I considered it to be approximately 12 minutes in length. It's all estimation because I was able to observe at least 3 songs playing, and the songs average about 3 minutes, so 3 or 4 different songs. And so I estimated approximately 12 minutes.
How do you log it right after you've awakened it?
In fact, that's the thing. I don't always log right after I wake. My memory is actually pretty good. And so what I tend to do is I can think about them throughout the day and remember them throughout the day, and then I log them at night before I go to bed.
And do you think it remains in the same condition as after you've just awakened? Don't you think some details get slipped?
Sometimes it doesn't. I can tell sometimes that I didn't remember things as clearly, but also there are plenty of times where it does, because I'll actively think about it throughout the day. My memory is pretty good. Like, I'm the kind of person who can remember what I ate for lunch like days ago. And
that's crazy.
I can tell you exactly what I was doing on Saturday, July 16th, 2022. Wow. I can tell you, how it was when I got off of one of my flights, what my experience was like walking through the Dallas-Fort Worth International Airport, and how American Airlines Flight 584 was delayed. I was in seat 11C, actually. It was seat... No, yeah, it was... Actually, I think it was seat 10. Yeah, I think it was 11C. There was no recline on that seat, and I was on the left side aisle seat of the aircraft. I was checking my phone right when the plane landed. I could turn off airplane mode, and I got a text message saying that my flight was delayed. My American Airlines Flight 584 Dallas to Tucson, which was great because that gave me time to get to the airport. I ended up getting my bag and getting off the aircraft. I was able to get into the airport, and it was weird because when I got off the top of the jetway, it was this weird area where it's like there was a railing and there was something down below, which was really not normal. Then I went left and up a ramp into the airport, and I remember that we went out and got onto a tile area like you have in the middle of concourses and made a right turn. I was following the crowd at this point, and I was looking for the SkyTrain. And I was in this crowd of people. I was with my bag in my left hand, cane in the right hand, like I would normally walk. And we got into a sort of central area up a ways, and people were telling me to get to the SkyTrain, I need to go to the right. And then they said there was an elevator back behind the escalator. So I walked behind the escalators and around to the left, and then got on the elevator, got up, and then I think I walked to the left again, and there was the SkyTrain, and then I boarded the first one that came. It was on the left, and I boarded that first one that came in and got on it and looped all the way around the airport and went to Concourse A. And then when I got off at Concourse A, I found a sort of older gentleman. When I was near a TSA checkpoint, I got off and was going towards like the right, and there's a TSA checkpoint on my right. And he helped me get down to gate 849, which was, he was on my left walking with me in my bag, and I was there a little early to pre-board, but I managed to get checked in and pre-board for flight 584. I was in seat 19C, that's his left side aisle seat. I counted my way back from the divider because the row behind the first class divider is 8, so I count all the way back to 19. And then there are people next to me in A and B. Well, as soon as I drop off my stuff, flight attendant helps from my bag, put my backpack down, I went back to row 23 where the bathroom is on an Airbus A321 in American Airlines. And I went and used the restroom, and I went back to my seat, people board. I get the seatbelts ready for the people next to me. I make sure they're extended and stuff so they don't have any issues putting their seatbelts on. And then the people sat down. We were flying. I had the Wi-Fi because I bought a monthly Wi-Fi subscription so I could get free, the Wi-Fi on all 4 of my flights. It was cheaper. And so I was talking to these ladies. They both had family in the area. One was from Dallas, one was from the DC area, and had flown from Reagan on American Airlines from DCA to Dallas. And we were talking about Tucson. They were telling me a few things. One, how the heat haze and like the hills kind of make for some turbulence as you come into Tucson. Also, there's an Air Force base right next to the airport. And so whenever the Air Force base is conducting operations, the airport actually shuts down. And then I was on Discord messaging specific people as well in the Lucid Dreaming chat on Dream Cafe. And I was telling them I was on my flight, and they're like, "Are you on the ground?" And I made a joke based on Bill Engvall's "Here's Your Sign." I said, no, this is definitely not an out-of-body experience. It's a joke he made about lost luggage. It was like, he would go to the lost luggage office, and it's like, you guys lost my luggage. And the lady said, "Has your plane landed yet?" And it's like, "Nope, I'm just having an out-of-body experience. Wanted to check on it. Here's your sign." And so the joke is they thought I was still on the ground, and no, I'm in the plane using the Wi-Fi. And so I was kind of making a joke they wouldn't.
Were you good with exams at school, at university, with such an outstanding memory?
Yes.
Oh, I would imagine.
In
Have you
high
ever thought
school,
about becoming a
all the way through
writer
high
or
school,
something?
yeah, all the way through high school, a lot of my studying, I didn't have to do a ton of actual review for a lot of different things.
Right. Do you think having a memory like that surely contributes to your lucid dream success?
Oh, it definitely helps.
Yeah, and then when you previously said that sometimes you do remember everything in great details and sometimes closer to the end of the day you don't.
It really varies. It can vary.
Yeah, do you think your brain sort of on purpose sorts certain things out which are secondary and irrelevant and unnecessary and leaves the best?
I think a lot of it, what it can be, is also my sleep schedule too. Like if I'm not consistent with the sleep schedule, if I'm not getting up or going to bed at the same times, that affects recall as well. And so I think a lot of that can be the sleep schedule, or if I'm not getting as much sleep as I could, like if I'm only getting 7 hours instead of 8 or 9, or getting 6 instead of 8 or 9, that really affects as well. It affects how many dreams I can remember, affects the detail as well. And so it can really vary. Sometimes their details are they're like hyper detailed, hyper realistic. Sometimes I can remember some of the most random bits of information, but not all the things that happened before or after. And so those details are. Do
you have those moments sometimes when you seem to have forgotten the previous dream, and then as soon as your head hits the pillow, boom, you've got these flashlights and sparks of memories from the previous night's dream?
Yeah, I've had that happen. It's kind of.
Bless you.
Thank you.
Bless you.
It's kind of like if I lay down to bed, sometimes I will actually remember bits of a previous dream. Just like dream delving. Have I talked about dream delving with you yet?
I don't think.
It's one of the methods for dream recall that I teach here, because everyone knows dream journaling for recall, right? How often do you see people recommend any other techniques for dream recall?
Well, it's a famous one. It's a popular one indeed. Yeah.
Well, with dream journaling, yes, it's very popular. It's famous, and for good reason. It's very important. Everyone's going to recommend it. However, it's not the only thing you can do. Like before you go to bed, you can actually review recently journaled dreams. You can review them. And then you can also, while doing that, you can set intentions. You can decide that you're going to remember your dreams when you wake up. You set that intention to remember dreams when you wake up. And then when you wake up, there's this thing called dream delving. Now, here's the thing. The scientific community actually didn't want to give this a name. And I discussed this on YouTube in the comments on someone's video about a month ago. I think it was a month and a half ago. I think it was before Christmas. Anyway, I'm not going to name names. I did have a conversation with someone at the International Dream Conference about this, and I don't want to bring up any names, but I actually remember specific details, like where I was sitting in this room when I had this conversation, where I was, what day of time it was. But all the specific details aside, when I was talking to this person, we were discussing this and how this is recommended, but it doesn't have a name. And the argument is, well, there are too many things like have their own names out there. This is true. Most of the things that are quote-unquote techniques are just versions of wild anchors. They don't really need their own names. They're just anchoring methods for wild. They're not really their own techniques. However, to be fair, dream delving is, I think, unique enough. And the name comes from a combination of dream views and the Discord communities. I think on the Discord communities, we have made it popular. It's people like me telling people to do that. The technique, though, for example, if you look at how I'm going to describe dream delving, and you look at things that are recommended, for example, on lucidity.com, there's this, it's an old site, and the information is good, but they haven't updated their SSL certificate in like 5 years, and so it's going to look weird when you get on there. But the information is good, and they don't ask for anything, so just go and browse. But there's this article, NL 1.1, from this book called Nightlight, and it is about dream recall, and it actually tells you to do almost this exact same thing. And there also is a free self-study course by Dr. Elliot Gish on luciddreamstudies.org, which is really good, and it recommends doing the same thing too, and it works off of what's called state-dependent memory. And so what you do when you first wake up, you do this as soon as you can after waking up. You stay in the position you woke up in. This is your most recent sleeping position, and you try to think about what you were just dreaming about, what you were just doing, and what you were just experiencing with all your senses: sight, smell, hearing, touch, etc. And you go through what the goal is, that you think about your thoughts and your emotions too.
Right.
And the goal is that you get a dream scene, you get some sort of information, and then you think about what happened before that. What did I do before this? And you work your way backwards until you've gotten as much detail as you can. Now, the reason this works, so first off, there's state-dependent memory, okay? Now, this is, the position you're in, the state that you're in. Memory, you know that memory works off of association, right?
Yeah, pretty much.
Right. So how you associate things is how you remember things. Remember I told you about the flag earlier and how I knew the word flag was coming up, and I associated that with the dream content? Yeah, this is how memory works. So what you're doing is you're associating the sleeping position with your dream memories, your most recent ones. The reason why you start at the end and work your way backwards is because the memories at the end are the easiest to recall. The issue with dream recall is sometimes those memories can be hard to encode, and so that's how you tend to lose them. But when you're associating with them in that state, you start with the most recent. They're the easiest to associate to, and they're associated with what happened before it, and that's why you work your way backwards. Then when you've gotten as much as you can from that position, if you sleep in other positions, you can move over to those positions and repeat the procedure. And that's what we call dream delving. It doesn't really have a name in the scientific community, but it is something that's recommended. And giving it a name is something I'm personally going to try to change. I don't know how long it's going to take, but I'll be darned if I'm not able to get
this whole procedure must surely be done right after you've awakened.
That is correct, because again, like I said, dream memories can be difficult to encode, and so waiting for a bit actually makes this harder to do. So yes, the point is to do this immediately when you wake up. Anytime you wake up, you can do this during the night. If you wake up during the night, you can do this in the morning. Anytime you wake up.
Does it matter whether you've moved your body?
You can if you need to shut off your alarm. It is obviously best if you haven't, if you woke up naturally.
Right.
But if you need to turn off an alarm, just do it as quickly as you can and immediately get back to that. What really hurts recall of dreams in particular is sustained distraction. For example, one of the things that's hurt my recall before is if I get woken up by a phone call and I have to answer the phone. And so I have to engage with something for a sustained period of time. That hurts recall.
Right. So you've got to be on the same wavelength.
Limit your distraction. And some people might find that they fall asleep doing this because obviously you're relaxing. You're in the position you woke up in. Now, there are a couple things you can do for that. You can try to make yourself uncomfortable and try to keep yourself awake that way. You could also set an alarm, for say 15 minutes after you would normally wake up. And then if you fall asleep while you're dream delving, no worries, because there's an alarm there and it can wake you back up.
How effective would you say this method is?
Very. In terms of basically what you're doing is you're weaponizing how memory works to remember things.
Nice. Yeah.
Now,
so statistically pretty results.
Nothing is perfect, but honestly, it is a great way. Just like the reason why you journal dreams is you're going through those memories, you're kind of reinforcing them. It helps with the reinforcing those memories, making them easier to remember. Well, in this case, you're actually using how memory works to try to access those memories that are harder to encode. You're using those direct associations you can have to these memories to try to access them.
Don't you also think that these priceless moments, seconds, split seconds of right after you've just awakened is pretty much miraculous and magical moments when you can do lots of interesting things when your brain seems to be in this, bordering state?
You're talking about hypnopompic transitions. So hypnopompic transition, you're waking up. That is transitioning from being asleep to awake. I wouldn't say it's really magical. You're just transitioning from being asleep to experiencing external sensory input and being awake. Now, if you're naturally waking up, you can use this hypnopompic transition to do what's called DEILD. It's Dream Exit Initiated Lucid Dream, and that's where you basically use the dream you're just waking up from as sort of as a wild anchor, and you think about it. You're basically dissociating from waking senses, and you're thinking about the dream. And the goal is that instead of fully waking up, you fall back asleep into the dream, and you can use this to either get lucid, but it's not commonly used to get lucid. It's more used to continue a lucid dream. So because the point is you have to be aware that you're naturally waking up. If you fully wake up, you can't do this. It's very opportunistic. People who say that they want to do this as a main technique, I always tell them it's like basically saying you're trying to catch the train by making it at the station and catching the train right across the
Can't we though somehow facilitate this stage, this condition of when we've just awake and we haven't moved, and we must be, I would imagine, pretty good at setting an intention, because that was the main problem.
The thing is though, you can definitely set intentions to notice natural awakenings. In fact, this is a really good way to do wake back to beds, for example. It's better than using alarms. Natural awakenings are always superior. Here's the thing, all right? If you fully wake up, that opportunity for DEILD is gone. Like the DEILD that I just mentioned, that kind of needs to be done within seconds of waking up.
It's pretty much 3 seconds, right?
And if within a very short amount of time, and just to give you an example, I'm a light sleeper. If I fully wake up, it can take me anywhere from 15 to 30 minutes to fall asleep. When I've done DEILD, it takes me 30 seconds. That just gives you an idea. I'm not fully awake. I'm not fully waking up. Now, that's the thing, though. You have to be aware that you're waking up. Now you can try to maybe set intentions to notice this, but again, I say it's very opportunistic, and the reason it's opportunistic, think about this: like you ever take trains anywhere?
Sure.
Have you ever had to make connections between
Yeah.
trains? How often does it work out that you get off of one train and the train you need is right across the platform?
Oh no, yeah, you've gotta. No, it's not very.
That's what DELD is like. It's like catching a train and connecting to another one right across the platform. It's great when the opportunity is there. It is amazing. It works well. It is great, but the opportunity kind of has to be there first. It's very opportunistic.
And it feels so unfortunate and unlikely for me personally that it is quite random at times. You cannot really sufficiently provoke it, right? There must be certain things that can facilitate it to the best of its ability.
The best way, honestly, is if you're already lucid. If you're lucid in a dream, you're going to be aware that that dream is ended.
For sure.
So when you're aware that you're waking up, you can do this very much more easily. In fact, the last time I did this, because I still have my log open, let me see. Oh yeah. January, Lucid Dreams 7:59, January 9th, 2023. That was a Monday. Sometime around, is a bigger gap of time. I didn't know the exact time. Day 8, night 8:16, day 8:17, around 5 minutes. This was a DEILD. I had 2 dreams, and one of them was DEILD back into it. That was the last time I did that.
Right. So within the dream, you knew you could implement it right after you've awakened, right?
Yes, because as I woke up, I just basically thought about the dream that I had been having.
And did you get back to that previous dream right after you?
Precisely.
Yeah, nice.
Exactly.
Now, have you ever heard about the similar technique, but the difference being is that after you've awakened, you're immediately trying to incorporate certain techniques, such as, for example, like splitting around your axis with your phantom body, trying to move a limb of yours without physically moving it, to the point where you actually start feeling like the limb is moving it, or maybe taking your body up.
About hypnagogic, or you're talking about like you're talking about hypnopompic transition, you're talking about hallucinations at this point. I don't get hypnopompic transitions like that. I don't get hypnopompic hallucinations, really. I get hypnagogic hallucinations at times, and I can control them. It's like hypnagogic hallucinations are primarily auditory for me. So it sounds like there's somebody there talking to me, and I can kind of direct it like directing the flow of a river. And I can kind of make it go in a direction I sort of want it to go, and I can steer it. I try to do it passively because I'm using that as a wild anchor usually. And when I get those, I can usually wild successfully most of the time. When I actually do notice those hypnagogic hallucinations, when they're sustained. If they're just there very briefly, you kind of snap in and out of it. But if they're sustained and I notice them, I can wild with those pretty effectively.
Yeah, it's all, again, about snatching the opportunity right on time. Lots of people, according to what I've heard, seem to also report floating above their body when they apply a method like that. You must have heard of something like that. That's
basically, I haven't really done anything like that. Again, I'm blind too, so I don't see anything. There's no quote unquote visual body of anything. Right. And so, visually, to me, you do not exist.
Yeah.
Like I can't see you. Sure. You don't exist. My computer screen is black.
Well, man, listen. At times, sometimes I question if I do exist. However, even in my own mind.
Basically, all that is like dreaming by any other name. I mean, dream experiences aren't limiting at all. You can dream about anything at all that you could even potentially imagine. And the sort of floating sensation you're describing, this is commonly reported with like hypnagogic hallucinations. If you're sort of like on the cusp of transitioning into a dream. You're aware of that transition. You kind of notice these hypnagogic hallucinations. That is basically what that is. So that is what we would call tactile hypnagogia. You're getting some sort of tactile hypnagogic hallucination.
Yeah, and you could only imagine how many myths and theories have arisen on this.
Oh, trust me, I know a few, but those are not the topics that I generally discuss.
Yeah, for sure, right? Because they do not seem to be rational.
As I would say, you ever heard the phrase "a rose by any other name"?
Nope, I don't think I did.
There's this it's like a poetic thing or something. It's like a rose by any other name is still a rose. And so I just say a dream by any other name.
Yeah, right. Sure.
Yep.
Sure, for sure. Yeah, I do get it. You can get behind those people who claim to have been abducted by aliens or to have had certain religious experiences.
I've actually read a couple of studies about this that basically demonstrate that these are sort of combined like hypnagogic style hallucinations with observing transitions into dreams. So
correct. Yeah, I
yeah,
believe that's what it might be. However, I've been lately also toying with the idea that maybe some real, not to get too irrational here, obviously, right? I think you can get where I'm going with that, but maybe aliens get somehow, if I was an alien, right?
I've been following where you were going for about 5 minutes. So
Yeah,
I'm pretty familiar with that territory. It's not new to me.
Right. Sure. Yeah. So it's interesting.
But I'm highly analytical. I always look for how things work, and I feel like I have a decent understanding so far on how a lot of things work, at least from like the not like the physiological methods. We still don't know a lot about how it works, but from like in terms of what we're able to observe, we can kind of get an idea for how things work in that sense, in sort of the mental sense of how things work versus the physiological sense. We still don't know most of how the brain works. Like we're still very much infants in the science of neurology.
For sure.
So,
which is both scary and exciting at the same time, because way more things are yet to come. Who even can? Yep. I don't even imagine what's about to be unraveled. Do you wish sometimes for lucid dreams to get more recognition and attention, or do you still feel like it's a little bit secluded topic?
Yes, I want it to get more recognition and attention. In fact, I'm one of those people who wants to like preach it to the world. I want to teach the world about lucid dreaming. I would love there to be more research on it. Honestly, I think there's so much.
And it doesn't feel to you like some sort of a secret hidden power that you and a couple of you selected possess? No, you don't want that to be
not
like
at all.
that.
It feels like a very logical, reasonable, explainable phenomenon that can be taught as a skill to anyone.
With this crazy current focus on virtual reality and AI and shift into the digital environment, it's already been happening to our brain for God knows how long, right? And people concentrate on technology instead of going inside.
I think about like the Borg from Star Trek. You will be assimilated.
Resistance is futile. Yeah. Have you ever had any scary experiences, terrifying, let's say maybe encounters in lucid dreams?
No, never never been terrified. The closest I get is like suspense thriller. Hell, I've been kidnapped by slaver aliens who are basically enslaving everyone they encounter. And
you knew what was happening, didn't you?
Like, well, it was based on a Star Trek game that I played, a text-based game. This alien race kidnapped a bunch of people, and then I ended up having to steal one of their ships. Oh, and they also killed someone to prevent them from causing trouble. There was like there was a telepathic alien who was injured, and their pain was basically being broadcast to other people, and so these aliens killed them so they wouldn't hurt the rest of the slaves.
Well, that sounds like a regular Friday of mine.
But a regular Friday. But like, I'm not really scared. Like, I have this like implicit thing in dreams where I know that things are going to work out.
I think it's because you've been in a topic. I think it's not really possible to truly scare you because you know initially what's going on.
Well, here's the thing. This happened way before lucid dreaming. This has been my whole life. This has been my whole life. I've been alive for 26 years. I've never really had like that kind of. I've been like startled in some dreams before, but like for me, the closest I would get to a nightmare is like a suspense thriller. I've had like a couple SCP related dreams and like some suspense thriller dreams, but I never actually get hurt by anything. And
have you died in dreams a lot?
Yeah, I have been hit by a train, shot by an orbital space laser strike that I actually called down to take out some like entity or something. Okay. I have, let's see, how else have I died? I've had those things happen to me before. I'm pretty sure I've had something else happen as well. And there, of course, was the time where I'm also times where I'm completely invincible. Like there's this one time where I was in a room full of people and I was lucid, and there's this massive explosion that happened. It just destroyed everything but me within like a pretty large radius.
What about the level of pains you experienced in None. Wouldn't you want that to be some?
With having that kind of experience, and so I don't experience it.
But wouldn't you want to have some? Not really. Experimentally not, right?
Well, that's not really an area I'm interested in messing with.
Right.
I'm perfectly kind of fine not having that sort of type of experience, and so I generally don't have them. And it's not like I'm actively avoiding that. I just don't want to associate my dreams with having those experiences.
Right. Yeah. Me, on contrary, I remember the active phase of me practicing. I think I did get pretty interesting to test my, let's say, physical abilities in terms of pain tolerance in the dream, because it was like a safe option for me initially. Yeah, so
I know people who have done that.
Sure. Yeah. What do they say in terms of pain, how hard it is?
They've been able to. There's one guy who basically cut off his own arm in a dream to demonstrate that it wasn't actually real. Like, it was just they're part of the dream. He did that because like the character told him to, and yeah, he experienced pain doing that.
He did.
So, like,
the bad one.
I'm not. I don't exactly know the exact level, but I think it was pretty intense. But
Wow.
I've never done that. Like I've never experienced any pain. I had this weird dream. This was a non-lucid dream, but I had this weird dream where like there's this like weird bit growing out of me that I was like half eating and half trying to put back in, and it was like really weird, but it wasn't painful at all. Like I've had some really weird crap happen, but like nothing really painful. Like I've jumped into airplane. Well, not out of. I've jumped out of airplanes in real life, and then I jumped into an airplane once or twice in a dream, and I've jumped off of things. I said I got hit by a train before and didn't feel any pain from that. Just respawned somewhere, and I was telling everyone not to stand on the train tracks. It was a weird system because I ended up getting loose in that dream, but it's a weird system. The train was automated, and to summon it, you had when it wasn't in normal operation, you had to stand on the tracks for a bit to summon it, and then move out of the way. And it was a high speed train, so it was like, shoo, and it would zip in, and I ended up getting hit by it. It was really weird, but yeah.
Do you tend to notice how certain elements of reality sometimes get incorporated in the dreams, in terms of like in a dream, whether it's a lucid dream or a regular dream, sometimes you might, let's call it some sort of minor physical, discomfort, and then you wake up and it's all about the numb leg or a numb hand which you've had. Yeah, but in a dream
I'll wake up from like numb hands and stuff,
really?
But I'm not really sure if that's incorporated into my dreams in the same way.
But it does with other people, don't you think?
It does with other people, I think. But like I'll wake up.
And it's interesting how it gets connected. Like all the dots get pointed, right, and everything gets connected. And you think, oh wow, that was a part of the story. While in reality, you just fell asleep on glass or something.
But like I've not really had like a lot of those experiences. I've woken up with like laying on my arm and having numb arms before, and get the blood flow going into your hand. It actually feels really weird because you can feel. So, and I'm sure you've done this before. So you're awake, and you can feel your hand, but you don't have any feeling in it, and so it almost feels like it's like a lifeless appendage.
And then you touch it with another hand. Yeah.
No. That's what I'm saying. You touch it with your other hand, but you don't actually feel. You feel the hand with your other hand, but you don't actually feel the hand that's touching.
Yeah, that's weird. It's happened. Yeah.
It is cool, but it is also weird.
Yeah.
You just have to get the blood flowing back into it, and then you can start getting sensation.
Yeah. Yeah. Right.
But yeah, sleep. With my fat head, sleeping on an arm is not a good idea.
Yeah.
But
right.
But yeah, I've had that
totally dark in your room.
Dream. I've had some weird stuff in dreams before though, but
right.
My dreams are usually pretty tame, to be honest with you.
Interesting.
They're a lot of fun though. I do a lot of like exploring places that I want to go to or just visit. I do a lot of travel in my dreams. I'm visiting places with friends, or I'm in other cities, or I'm just exploring random places, or I'm on flights.
Have you created, first of all, would you be anyhow comfortable with turning on the lights in your room if just for the purpose of video, or is that not really?
I don't really feel like getting up
right
at the moment, honestly. The video, like I said this would probably happen with the video. It's not as dark as it is over there right now, because it's like, let's see here, it's almost 6 p.m. But
no, it's fine.
I'll just turn the camera off.
Right. Yeah, sure. That would be better for sure. Yeah, thank you. Right now, I was going to ask you if you've ever if you've created any characters that live. Yeah, you do, right? That live
I've
exclusively.
created some persistent characters for my persistent realm.
Nice.
There is one of them, Captain Augustus Hartley of the starship ZSS Star Horizons. There's a Zordonian starship Star Horizons. It is a Titan class super carrier. I've created a whole bunch of stuff, just in my head for it. So it is 50 miles long, 5 miles wide, 500 decks on the main mast, carries 24 Peacekeeper class cruisers, 100 Guardian class escort frigates, and 4,800 Protector class starfighters aboard. Crew of 2.5 million. Each of the cruisers has 240 starfighters, and each frigate has 12, for a grand total of 11,760. Yes, I did the math.
Wow, that's
I
impressive.
even created a zoning system based on I created a zoning system that's like per quarter mile, from like the length and width of the ship, so it has zones, and then deck number and compartment number, like for locations.
How long does an average lucid dream last subjectively in a dream? Because is it true that factually those dreams do not last many minutes, pretty much, right?
It
But
really varies. Factually, a lucid dream can last anywhere from like under a minute to an hour.
right, right. But
It
within
really
it,
varies from person to person.
but within it, it might go on for how long do you think was
It's
the
really,
longest?
again, like, you know, the number one thing in dreams is that P word I keep bringing up, perception. You're not really changing how time actually passes.
Sure.
But you can perceive that it passed more than you did. Like, for example, I had a dream that perceived it was like several days, when in reality it was actually just 20 minutes worth of experience.
Yeah.
But because it's, you know, there are several different points where it's like I went to sleep and got up or something during the night, or it's like it's perceived to be several days when it's actually just 20 minutes.
But it did happen with you, right? When it's been a couple of days, you said?
But it's not like I'm perceiving the full, or I don't have memory of that time.
Yeah, it feels like it was a couple of days.
It is full perception.
Yeah.
There are two things that can happen here. One is, there's a few things actually. So there's changing perception in terms of where, you know, you feel like days have passed because it's like you spent nights doing something and it's now the next day or something. There's that kind of perception. There's another kind where you're doing a bunch of activities really, really quickly, and so it feels like you've done a lot more than you actually have when you didn't spend much time doing that. Then the third kind is false memory generation, and that's where you can create false memories of doing things you actually didn't do, and so it really feels like you spent a long time doing something, but in fact what you did is you have false memories of things that you didn't actually do.
Which makes you think as if it lasted for longer than it actually did.
Correct. That's basically how.
Interesting. That's just yet one of the way how your memory can really trick you.
Memory is very interesting. Honestly, it's a lot of fun.
Yeah, indeed. Now, when you said you've got friends, you've created characters, have you ever tried? Now, I'm trying to go on some kind of a esoteric limb, you know, pardon my curiosity, but have you ever tried to do some sort of a multiplayer version of Lucid Dream? And a lot of people have, in fact, tried something like that, to Lucid Dream mutually with somebody.
Not really.
Yeah. Wouldn't you think that there might be some sort of potential hiding, lurking?
I think that as we get to more technology like Neuralink, for example, that such a thing will be possible, though there will be a lot of risk that comes with linking
oh man, that's
going to
be a hell of experience.
I honestly, I would love to have a brain-computer interface just for like, I've actually given thought to how such a thing could work, you know, on the mental side of like incorporating information and trying to operate, for example, an airplane with just your mind and using your senses to sort of feel and see what the vehicle you're operating is able to detect around you, like to the point where you become that vehicle at the highest end of the interface. Like it completely overrides your sensory inputs and you just become the vehicle that you're operating. And then your reaction times are instantaneous because everything is done through your brain to computer through basically light speed communications, to the point because it's electromagnetic communication, so it's near light speed instantaneous communication, and everything is instantaneous. You can instinctively react to a situation instead of having to process the situation and then use secondary forms of control. Like for example, if you're controlling an airplane today, you're using manual controls. You have like a control yoke, throttles, and you have different systems, so your reaction times can be pretty fast. However, you still have to react to these other systems. If the aircraft was completely run by a computer and your brain was, you know, hooked into it, then as soon as you think of doing something, you do it, and your reaction time just becomes that much faster, and you don't have to flip switches and hit buttons and do different things. Like you can just feel yourself doing something and just do it, and instead of having to look at a display to know certain bit of information, you just think about that information, you just know it, and you can just get a feeling for example, your heading that you're flying, where you're going, how fast you can get all that information in under a second.
Sure.
And you could just try to you could process some of it, but you can also do it in a more vague sense. Like you can just get a rough picture of what it is like to be doing what you're doing in that moment, and to just get like a rough idea. I mean, there's so many ways I think you could go with this kind of thing, that it's really interesting. But you have to get to the point of being able to stimulate that sort of activity to reflect accurately what's being processed. I mean, there's a long way to go until we get to that.
I'm getting the impression you could seriously consider the Neuralink. Am I wrong?
Yeah, you're getting that impression.
Yeah.
That's an accurate impression, I think.
Yeah.
I would definitely consider the ability, like if I had the ability to actually link up to a computer and process information like that, I mean, I would definitely consider it.
For the sake of opportunities? For
the sake of like some opportunities and just to do random crap I would otherwise not be able to, they'd be able to process information. Like I would have access to a lot of information I wouldn't be able to get. Like there's a lot of visual information, graph type information, imagery. A lot of things I don't really care as much about seeing that as I care about being able to just process raw data. And so I would love to be able to just like process information and see how fast you could process information, and also get to a point like I think this, like if this technology advances the point, if we can actually get to the point, like we're talking really hypothetical, and I've gone way off the deep end just in my own thoughts about how this can work before, and I'm thinking hypothetically, if we got to a point where, you know, we had the ability to actually, first off, we have to map out how the brain works really effectively. We have to know how all of this stuff works, how neural pathways get created, how information is translated on a one-to-one level. We have to be able to translate specific information into neural impulses. We have to know how the brain works to that level, because we would need that. For example, you know, when you're dreaming and you experience like, you know, sensory inputs, you know, those same neural pathways are being used for that sensory input. Now, basically, when you're dreaming, obviously that's what controls your sort of sensory input. And so it's like a signal versus noise ratio. I talk about this with incorporating in audio into dreams, for example. The most success that I've had doing that has been through false awakenings, because there's less content overall. And so it's like, what content is there? But like, if you're trying to stimulate like actual specific thought processes, you would have to be able to translate the information accurately. It would have to be a sort of one-to-one accurate translation. We are not there yet. We are way off. But if we got to that point where we could, instead of having like vague generalizations, we could get something really accurate, you could get to a point where you could almost download information into your brain.
What was that film with Johnny Depp, Transcendent, wasn't it? I'm sure you've seen it.
I'm not sure what it was, but like something like that, I feel like you could have what's called, like in sci-fi, it's called like flash learning, where you're able to just download information and create neural pathways.
Yeah.
And you could probably rewire the human brain to do things it was not.
Yeah, like the other day I've heard that on a podcast, and I've been thinking about that ever since, how scientists obviously now are capable of teaching one monkey on one end of the world a certain skill or set of skill, and somehow digitally write it over some sort of transportable flash card, or I hope it's not a CD disk, those seem rather obsolete, and then just digitally via an email send it to another lab on another end of the world, and those guys can now transport it into the other monkey's head, and that's crazy.
Well, if they're getting close to that, then that's cool.
That's common, right? Yeah.
I am like, I'm good at like just logically analyzing things and break things down, but it's like, you know, because I can see a few different outputs here. So one of them is your brain is trying to process a lot of information it's getting from a computer. Now, too much information, obviously, you know, because you can only devote your attention to so much at once consciously, but like too much could like overload your brain. But then the other question is, if you're trying to process a ton of information, could you offload some of that process onto a computer or multiple computers? Like, say, for example, okay, so imagine this. You're a military pilot, and you are flying, you know, of course, manned aircraft may not be a thing here. You're flying a drone as a military pilot, and you're flying it by a brain-computer interface. And you're looking for a specific target that is moving. And now you're trying to track this target and like calculate, you know, a vector for intercepting this target. This target is moving, it's trying to evade you. And you can try to do all that with your brain, or you could use the computer to do it, or you could offload that task to several computers. For example, you might be monitoring the target through whatever sensors are on the drone, and you might also be monitoring it through a surveillance satellite, and you can combine all of that information together.
Yeah, it does give a lot of potential. Certain perils included in that equation as well. I'm not going to lie.
I've actually even given thought to a safety aspect of this. So, for example, you know, what would happen if you lost all interface? Like, say you're interfacing with something to the point where you're fully immersed in something, and it's basically overrides your senses to the point. What happens if you lose that suddenly? Like, if you go from that to suddenly being just snapping out of it, could that cause brain damage? And I thought of, well, if it could, how do you have an emergency sort of safeguard to prevent that from happening? I think, like, and I've actually given thought to how that could work. Like, if you had, like, for example, if certain thing was possible, like, say you were piloting a drone and the drone was destroyed and you lost uplink with it. Well, instead of just being snapping out of it, you could like be playing like something from it on a loop and slowly pulling you out of it instead of like snapping you out of it.
Right.
Like I actually given thought to this kind of stuff. Like as I'm a conceptualizer, what I'm actually decent at doing is thinking about scenarios and concepts and coming up with how something could potentially work, and then thinking about the different things that could happen as a result of if this hypothetical scenario.
I think you're low-key preparing for it. You see, I think that's the truth.
Basically, I give thought to a lot of random things.
It's a wild life. It's a wild time to be alive currently, right now, undeniably. Because seeing how technology advances.
It's a really crazy time to be alive right now.
Yeah. As crazy. I mean, probably the craziest. Probably the most comfortable and safest, wouldn't you say? In a lot of regards.
Not over there. Over here, maybe.
Yeah. Well, even over here, you know.
Honestly, crime has gone up in a lot of our cities in the past couple of years, so I wouldn't say safest. But
you think somehow, somewhere along the history of humankind, there have been safer times?
I think probably 5 years ago or 6 years ago might have been safer than it is now.
Yeah, because I've always treated like 100 years back.
I think the 90s were probably safer than the 2010s, just in general, because this is before we had a bunch of terrorist attacks and people trying to fly planes into buildings and all this crap we have to deal with these days, all the security stuff, all the bomb threats and all that kind of stuff.
I think it comes along. It's like it comes with a package.
It's also like I think there are some times where it was where it could be safer in the sense of the way people just treated each other, because the way people treat each other nowadays is different than people kind of how treat each other. It really depends on the community too. It depends on where you are, who you are, who you're with. There's so many different factors that go into whether or not it's safe, and honestly, it really depends on the situation. I would say, for example, walking through certain areas of certain cities nowadays probably isn't as safe as it was several years ago, and it kind of really depends on who you are in the situation. I'd say as a blind person, I can't see all the crap that goes on, but like for example, I was just in Philadelphia a few weeks ago. It was it was January 5th, right? And I was just visiting the city for the day, and I was at a transit hub, and I need to use the restroom, and that restroom had become a drug hotspot.
Jesus.
In fact, they send cops in there to do welfare checks in case people overdose on heroin in there. Like it was pretty bad, and that's like right in the heart of the city. It's like right in the middle of the city, and so it's like some of that wasn't as bad a few years ago as it kind of is now in certain areas, and then but technologically we have technologically improved greatly. Like cars are safer now, in terms of like we have the backup cameras and we have the different sensors and the different things. So it's like vehicles are actually safer. Safety technology has improved on all things. But like, and then on the other side, it really depends. I wouldn't say quote unquote we're safer now than we were X, or like I wouldn't really make that case.
I mean, we shouldn't
because with new technology, there's new danger too.
Sure, undeniably. It's just a different level, I guess.
And then there's always like the societal aspect and like how people are dealing with things like. Because, the nature of crime has evolved a lot, too. I mean, we've gone from the identity theft is a huge thing nowadays. Cybercrime. It's very, very big. And so, like, I would say the nature of victimization of people has really evolved along with the nature of technology.
For sure. Let me ask you about your blindness, if you're comfortable talking about that.
I'm fine. I tell everybody.
I've been intending to ask you whether it's congenial or it's gained, whether you've had it somewhere along the life.
Genetic.
Genetic.
How? It is called senior Loken syndrome. It causes a combination of Leber's congenital amaurosis and nephronethesis. And that last one, I can't really spell for you.
Not that I'm particularly.
But basically what it does is Leber's congenital amaurosis is a genetic disorder with the rod and cone cells in the eye, and they kind of degenerate. They don't function as the way they're supposed to. And there's specific genes, I don't remember which one. And it causes progressive vision loss. I had some sight when I was younger. I used to be able to see like certain shapes. I could see like outlines of things pretty well. I was never really good at color. There was like some like light versus dark aspects, but like I couldn't tell certain colors apart. Like, for example, it was like purple, black, and stuff like that, or brown and black. Like, certain things I couldn't really tell apart.
So, on a scale from 1 to 100, would you say it's in the neighborhood of 90?
I'm getting there. Okay, so because I used to be able to like read certain things in print when I was younger, especially like large print in elementary school, and then that sort of degraded over time. And then when I got into high school, I got to where I am now, where it's called light perception. I can tell if the sun's out, and that's basically it. If there's a bright light, that's about all I can tell.
Now, having that in mind, how does your world look like in dreams?
How does my world? Well, here's the cool thing, okay? So when I'm awake, I actually visualize while awake. I'm doing it right now while I'm talking.
Right.
I can visualize, like when I thought about scenes and places I visited, I put myself in those situations. Like I put myself on that flight to Tucson. I put myself in Dallas Airport. I put myself
in precise details, right? In high precision.
In pretty good detail. Yes, I can put myself in specific places that I've been to. Like I have like a mind palace of every place that I visited that I care to remember. I just memorize, I memorize details. And I realized this like last year that I visualized while awake, and I visualize how things are sort of laid out. And then I visualize words too, but I visualize the words in Braille, like as I learned Braille. And now in dreams, I'll sometimes like I have light perception, like I said, when I'm awake. In dreams, sometimes I'll have like vaguely better visual. Like sometimes I'll have some lights and darks, or sometimes I'll have like a vague shape or outline of something. But it's more on the kin of how I can visualize things versus like seeing it. It's a little different. It's really interesting though, and like if it's based on specific memories, it'll be more detailed. If it's not based on memories, it'll be very vague. So it really depends too. But also the other condition I have is kidney failure. That's what nephronephrosis is. I'm a transplant patient.
Wow. Right. Yeah. So when you're dealing with a character in a dreams, when you talking to a familiar person, a friend of yours, it's basically a projection of your imagination in the dream.
There's no visuals at all.
No visuals at all.
Wow. There are no visuals when I talk to someone in real life.
Right.
There. It is auditory and tactile.
Okay, that's a huge difference between the dreams of a seeing person, obviously, and the blind one.
Exactly. Yeah. Also have less detail overall to render in those situations. And the other thing too is like when I have false awakening dreams, they are very stable. Things are where they're supposed to be, because a lot of people know where their things are in their room by looking at them, and I know where everything is by memorizing.
Sure.
Like I have to know where everything is, and so everything's exactly where I expect it to be, because if it's not, I'm going to have a problem. And so everything is memorized. So
you would definitely agree with what they say about blind people getting their other senses sharper than just
I would say
sight.
so, yeah. And you definitely notice more. One, you definitely notice more from your other senses because you have to rely on them. A lot of sighted people don't value hearing and touch at the same level, and so they don't pay attention. I would imagine. Everything is visual. Indeed. And so they don't pay attention to their other senses.
Yeah, me as a seeing person, sometimes I feel like almost, and that's going to probably come off bad, but I feel like way too much input gets just through the visual aspect, right? I'd like to get more input with other senses.
Yep, just close your eyes. But yeah, but like that's the thing. But you definitely do when you rely on them more and you have more like processing to it. Yeah, I definitely do think I hear better and I can kind of feel things better than most people would. I pay attention to it more because I have to. That's just survival.
Sure. Yeah, right. Would you somehow correlate it with this thing called intuition? What's your relationship with this somehow tricky term, intuition? It's again on the border
of... Well, it really depends, honestly, because I think that comes down to, at the end of the day, just, a lot of that I think is very associative. At the end of the day, you're kind of associating a lot of vague things, and you have a feeling about something. And it's very much based on some like subconscious associations. I get this a lot when I play Jeopardy. I'll just have a vague idea of a random answer, and I'll have no idea if it's right, and then I'll be right a lot of the time when I guess. Like it'll just be a complete guess, and it'll be right. And I'll just have like this vague idea, even though like if I hadn't heard something before, if I'm just guessing, like I'm pretty good at that. When I guess on something at Jeopardy, a lot of my guesses are right.
I've been also playing lately with this interesting idea regarding which I don't really have anybody to bounce it off, because obviously you don't get a lot of people like yourself who would be that deep in lucid dreams and that experience. Now, do you think music anyhow shapes your dreams?
My audio incorporation experiments that I've been running on myself are music-based. They're based on Sirius XM channel 61, which is what I fall asleep to when I'm trying to incorporate. So
is that some sort of rock radio station?
That is a country station, Y2 Country. That is 2000s era country music from 2000 to today. It's the stuff I grew up listening to when I was a kid, and so I really enjoy listening to it. And so, but I'd say in dreams, I've sung things in dreams pretty accurately, and sometimes I've made up just completely random songs. That's like, damn, I wish I could remember that. But it really, I wouldn't say it's really impacted my dreams though, not like that sense. I'd say it's
not
like
that
it's
it's
there.
sharp.
Like sometimes it's there. I wouldn't say it's really impacted my dreams though.
When you hear something coming from outside, like an alarm clock, for instance, doesn't come off in your dream like some kind of a ringtone or a concert.
I'm a very light sleeper, so when I hear something that
you wake up.
Ascribes what I attribute to be a startling effect, I wake up instantaneously. For example, I was in a lucid dream and I once got woken up by a text message tone that was less than half a second long.
Wow. Yeah, that's pretty, I don't want to say superficial,
but I call that a startling effect. So in fact, just describing my original audio incorporation experiments and why I'm doing them the way I do them. And this is important in terms of the way I can get startled awake and how this works in terms of audio for me. Is my original attempts was to like set an alarm based on a voice recording and try to get that to incorporate into a dream and try to notice it. Right. However, I could set my phone at 10% ringer and alerts volume.
And you still get...
And I could get woken up by it. 10%. Right? And so there was one time where it took me a while to wake up. There's a couple times where it was ignored, and there's a couple times where I woke up before it and woke up to it. However, so I decided that didn't work for a few reasons. One, I can wake up to something at that low volume. Two, there's an anticipatory effect. I've set an alarm and I know what time it's going to go. Yeah. Right, so that causes anticipation. That is a problem when you're trying to do an experiment where you know something is coming and you know exactly when it's not coming. Right. All right, so what I did instead is I set up this Sirius XM channel. I started on lower volumes initially, but a lot of times I'll do it on 35% volume. This is much higher than that 10%. However, my hypothesis at the time, which turned out to actually be correct, is that if I fall asleep listening to it and I'm able to fall asleep, it won't wake me up in the dream because it won't be startling me anymore. Right. Okay. So it's something that you're used to initially. Correct. And so I fall asleep at being exposed to that stimulus, and then in a dream, I'm able to notice that it's there and incorporate it. And then I've done some testing where I can, if I wake up, I'm able to verify the song that I just heard correctly. So for example, in that most recent one that happened, I verified 3 different songs that played. It started off as it was a false awakening chain. It started off as non-lucid false awakenings. And so I heard the song Hell Yeah by Montgomery Gentry, One Hell of an Amen by Brantley Gilbert, and then there was another song that I didn't catch. And then the last one was Chicken Fried by the Zac Brown Band. And I woke up during that song and verified that I was listening to that song correctly. Interesting. Nice. So it did get through, right? It did get through to you. And so I'm able to verify that I'm incorporating that correctly, and that I'm able to identify the correct song. And it's great because one of the other experiments I'm trying to do with this is I'm trying to change perception, spatial and volume perception of the song. And so I'm hearing it. And so what I have been able to do is I have been able to make it sound like it's coming in one ear when it's actually coming in the other, which is cool. I've been able to change my spatial perception. I haven't yet succeeded in changing the volume perception. Right. So I'm still working on that. But like I can make it sound like it's coming out of my phone, like it is on the nightstand. And a false awakening, I've tried picking up my phone and changing how I perceive it. But then I woke up, because part of my intention from that experiment was to notice the song change and then to wake up and verify I was listening to the correct song, just to verify that I incorporated correctly. So at this point, you're pretty much incorporating as many experiments as you can. I'm trying to. Now, here's the thing. Here's some other things I've observed from this. There are several things I've observed. One, false awakenings are the best results. And the reason for that is low dream content. Because the dream content I found, the more dream content there is competing for attention, there are 2 things that I've seen that cause issue with this. And I have two theories on this. One theory is attention. So attention span and what you're paying attention to. The more things that you're paying attention to, the harder it is to devote attention to each one. And I've actually experimented on this while awake. And I can verify this is true. Because if I'm trying to pay attention to multiple things at once, the amount of attention I can pay to each one varies, decreases drastically to the point where I can't recognize details. And so I end up being forced to choose between one or the other to pay more attention to. And then the other thing that doesn't get paid attention to, if I'm focused on something, gets ignored, even if it's present. The other hypothesis I have, the other theory is, actually theory and hypothesis are 2 different things, but in this case the theory is that, I think, actually this might be a hypothesis. Actually, it's not really testable in the same sense. Like I can't really verify which one is true or if both of them are. But the other theory I have is that I call it the signal versus noise ratio, and the noise being generated in this case is just dream content in general. And so the amount of auditory dream content makes it harder for me to actually notice the other stimulus. The other thing I've also noticed is that prolonged exposure reduces the effect. So when I very first started, I was able to do it on a low volume and get results. And then I had to turn the volume up, then I had to turn the volume up. And then if I did it for too long, like too many consecutive nights, what happened is I would just ignore the stimulus completely. And so what I do is I pace myself. I do it every so often. So that way I'm more likely to actually get successful results. And this has been demonstrated to be the case, that if I do it more, you know, it's still hit or miss sometimes, but like if I do it less often and do it on certain days, I'm more likely to get results. What I'm doing is I'm creating this sort of cognitive training effect to it. And so what I originally tried to do, and this is actually based on sort of some of the training they do in sleep labs. This is kind of how I base it on their targeted lucidity reactivation training that they do, where they involve you associating hearing, whatever stimulus they use, visual, tactile, audio. You associate that with questioning whether or not you're dreaming to get lucid. They use that for lucidity. So my original target was to notice the phrase Y2 country, which is played every 3 to 9 minutes. It's very reliable. However, I call it a pretty small target because it's a small phrase to hear, and if you're not incorporating that specific phrase, what I decided instead, and this works really, really well because I actually practice this whenever I listen to the music for fun while I wake. I practice this intention. I actually practice recognizing when the song changes and trying to determine if I'm awake or dreaming when the song changes. And so I actually practice this while awake when I listen to the music. And so I listen to it sparingly. I don't do it all the time. And so I try to make the effect, you know, a little bit more potent by doing that. And so what I do is I have the intention to notice when the song changes, because it changes every 3 minutes. Roughly everything. So in other words, it's reliable, and I'm more likely to, even if I skip or don't notice every song, I'm more likely to notice a broader target of a different pattern that I'm noticing instead of something very specific. And so that works actually pretty well. And then what I do is I bring my attention to the stimulus for a bit and actually acknowledge it and notice it, because the goal isn't just to get lucid, because I can do that pretty well on my own. The goal in this case is to actually acknowledge what I'm hearing.
Sure. Yeah. Well, that seems to have worked.
It's pretty fun. Like, it doesn't work all the time. I don't do it all the time. Like, I didn't do it today. Last time I did it was successfully. Last time I did it was last Sunday, like I reported. So I did it almost a week ago. I'll probably do it tomorrow. I meant to do it today. Didn't really feel like it. I do it when I feel like it.
Sure. Well, I think that's the way, right? Do you think that's exactly the way to lucid dreams, or should there be like an element of forcing and pushing yourself?
Well, yeah. Also, I want to do it too, and so like I'll set intentions like that. That night I did it too. I set really, really solid intentions, and I got really, really solid results.
Right.
It's like before I actually got into bed, I went through each of my dreams, modeled very intensely with each one, specifically set the intentions to what I wanted to do, like what I wanted to test with incorporating the audio, and I got 2 out of 3. So I feel pretty good.
Nice. Yeah.
So yeah.
Pardon my curiosity about you staying highly functioning on the internet. How would you mind speaking about how it's exactly done, how you reply to messages, how you manage to run YouTube channel? You basically do better and more than the seen person does on the internet.
Well, my videos, the ones that are up there, the actual videos, I didn't edit those. So most of my content is live streams, which I just do. They're easy. Also, I use what's called the NVDA screen reader on this laptop. Stands for non-visual desktop access. Screen reader technology has actually been around about as long as I've been alive. I think a little longer, so somewhere around 27 years. It's been around for a while. Close to 28 years. So, it has been around the block a few times.
Yeah.
And it's just gotten better and better. And so I use NVDA. It works really, really well. And it allows me to access not the exact same way that the sighted person would. There's some websites has accessibility issues. Reddit's chat feature, for example, is not very accessible. The headings for individuals' names is pretty good, but you don't get notified in your notifications, and so you have no idea who's chatting you about what. Like the reason why I say do use messages, and I told you to use messages, is because when I check my notifications, it'll say all, and then it'll say messages, and it'll have a number, like how many unread messages there are, and I will get an email. And so I can check my email, and that's how I knew you were messaging me, because I'm not just sitting in the message window and refreshing it every 2 minutes.
So what is there exactly on your laptop? Is there some sort of a touchpad that has some central output?
No, we blind people don't use mice. Mice are for beginners, for newbies. We use keyboard navigation entirely.
So it's all based on fingers perception.
All
I
the
guess,
keyboard
right?
shortcuts, arrow keys primarily. I use heading navigation. That's the H and Shift H for going forward and backward through headings. You can also use the numbers 1 to 6. You get through heading levels 1 to 6. You can navigate by links. U for unvisited, V for visited, B for buttons, L for lists. Let's see what else there is. R, I think, for regions, or no, R's I think radio buttons on this. You have checkboxes, combo boxes. You can navigate by a lot of different features using a screen reader. It's very, very useful.
Nice.
There's also insert control F, which is a find dialog. And so what I do in comments, there's actually an accessibility issue with Reddit comments. Whenever you post a comment, instead of putting you where the comment is or where whatever you posted, it's like, and this is really true when you reply to someone, this is really difficult. What it does is it puts you at the top of the page. And so say you're dealing with 50 comments on a page, and say you reply to someone that's 25 comments down. So instead of using the arrows to try to scroll through 25 comments, what I do is I pay attention to some of the specific words I use in a comment, and I get really, really good at this because I'm able to pick out a phrase that's only used in what I just wrote. And so I'm able to nail, like 9 times out of 10, directly nail with the comment I just replied to.
That's something perhaps
that use the find feature to go right to it and then navigate down through there.
Yeah, I was going to say perhaps the seeing users could incorporate something like that a little bit more often into their way of chatting in some comments.
Well, they can see it. Like, here's the thing, like with the chat is meant to be like an instant message feature, and it's meant like to be like had open at the bottom, and then you kind of see when a new message comes in. Well, it doesn't work that way. It doesn't, like in Discord, I'll get a beep. It'll notify me when someone sends me a message. I'll be like, okay, someone messaged me. On here, I actually set very clear boundaries on Reddit. My boundaries are this. So I start, whenever I do Reddit, I start with notifications. I go through notifications first, then messages, then posts, new to old, and I go through as many as I can. Today was an exception because I kept going back to messages because I was expecting you to message me. Aside from that, what I normally do is go through all the posts until I've gotten through as much as I can, or until I've gotten through all of them. Then I go back to notifications, and then I clear out all the notifications I can and new posts until there are no notifications, no new posts. And then after all of that, if I still have time, then I'll check chats. It's the lowest on my priorities.
How much time would you say you spend in daily on Reddit and Discord? Too much. Yeah.
I'm on there a lot.
Yeah, right.
Because I mean, have you seen how many posts there are every day?
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
I reply to most of them.
Wow.
Not, almost all of them. There are some of them that are completely irrelevant for me to reply to, and so I don't reply to them.
Like what?
I reply to like over 90%, I would say, probably.
What do you think would be something that you wouldn't normally reply to? Something
talking
that's
about, for example, like supplements. That's completely irrelevant. That's not something I talk about. People talking about like a non-lucid dream related thing, like certain things that come up, or they're not asking for help or advice, or they're just like, it's some comments I won't reply to. I'll read all of the posts. Some I won't reply to because they won't have any content in them, and there's nothing there, so there's nothing to reply to.
Right.
And then there are others that are there's some comments I'll report. Like if I see something that breaks the rules, I'll report that. I'll go and report things. And then sometimes I'll go through comments and I'll reply to replies and I'll reply to other people's comments. If there's something I feel like needs correcting, or if there's someone who may need some assistance with something, I'll reply to comments as well.
How many people are in that community?
476,000.
That's not bad, huh? I was gonna say whether Lucid in the beginning. I said whether Lucid Dream gets enough recognition. Well, there we go, right?
Well, only a couple hundred active at any given time, though, so it's not like we have 400,000 people active. Otherwise, that would be a nightmare. Can you imagine you trying to answer 400,000?
That would be some kind of a challenge for you, indeed.
It's hard enough to do 25.
Yeah. You would take it personally, wouldn't you?
Maybe. I don't know. Like, I'm just like this kind of like alpha. I'm like driven just to do this.
Well,
like,
that's cool that you're passionate about it, and you've obviously gotten good.
And I get a really much a sense of completion for being able to help people and get through.
And if you think about what you're actually giving to people, like, I mean, I don't know if a lot of people truly perceive lucid dreams the way you or anybody else who's ever done that. What do you remember? I bet you remember your first lucid dreams. What kind of emotion? Whoa.
Very like
euphoric, amazing. You'd say.
I actually realized that I'm walking. Like my first one wasn't much. Like I started breathing underwater right before I woke up, so I realized I was dreaming and then woke up immediately. But the second one happened a day later. Thursday, October 29th, 2020. Day 15, night 14 since beginning practice. And that dream took place in my bedroom. It was a false awakening class. It was a group of false awakening class scenarios, actually. And there were like these, like scientists in my dream that were like researching my dreams. It was really funny. And then I realized I was dreaming. It was like this amazing feeling. It's like, wow, like I'm actually walking around my room, but I'm not actually awake. It was the most amazing thing ever. Now that sort of novelty has worn off. I mean, it was 772.
I would imagine it does, right?
But it's amazing. It was
magic.
Exhilarating.
Unbelievable.
I was up hours earlier than I normally would. I couldn't wait to shout this to the rooftops. And then I had a false awakening right afterwards. So like before I actually woke up, my dream pranked me with a false awakening. It was really funny. And so I get out of bed. I'm walking around. There's like suitcase in my room, and I'm walking around the room, and I'm just thinking about like I can't wait to tell everyone like how amazing this was. And then I wake up. And I'm like,
nice.
And then I
it's both nice and a bit shocking how your brain tricks you.
I don't usually wake up before like on a lot of days. I don't wake up before 10 or 11. I was on voice chat on Discord shouting it to the rooftops at 8 in the morning.
Wow.
I was good to go that day. It was amazing.
Yeah, you normally ride the following week this wave of euphoria and excitement that this first or second thing has given you. It's amazing. It's amazing. Not a lot of people can feel it. Not a lot of people remember it. And again, the potential, man, right? The potential that it gives you. It's all about the potential.
Yep.
The novelty, the potential. The only limit
to actually be able to I'm so used to it now that it's actually a normal occurrence for me to get lucid. It's so fun to say. It's a normal occurrence.
Yeah. Now, speaking a little bit on the peril of those things, just because of this thing being so addictive, would you say it's addictive in the first place?
I don't know. Like, that's the thing.
Not sure.
This has been touched upon before. And I'd say generally no. It's the people who've talked about lucid dreaming say it's generally not addictive as far as, the sense. And of course, the caveat can be there that it could really vary from person to person, but it's generally seen as something that's not actually addictive. And there are certain like things that come with like addiction and in that I think I would say it's per se addictive. I'd say again, like, it all kind of varies from person.
That depends on the user, I would say. That depends on the person.
It doesn't have the same like addictive properties as say like a substance.
And then, by the way, what is not addictive? Everything could be addictive if misused, right? Like whatever positive, good element of your life you've got, you can overuse it, you can abuse it. So I'm sure you have faced with people perhaps that had been parts of your life where your real life gets a little bit compromised because of how amazing, unbelievable this thing at night is. Would you say no?
I wouldn't say that it has really caused.
You've not noticed, and not with you, but would you say anybody who you've interacted online with, anybody's complained about that?
Like it's something that comes up from time to time, but it's usually beginners who haven't really gotten lucid yet. Thinking like, well, am I gonna not know my real life? Or people who are saying like on YouTube, for example, like say don't do things that you like. You don't go to places or talk to people you talk to in real life because you won't tell the difference. Like, well, the whole point of lucid dreaming is to know the difference. It's like that's the point of lucid dreaming. Is
if I asked you to differentiate between the reality and the dream, how would you prove to me that currently what is going on is not a dream?
Computer, what is the current time?
It's 6:31 p.m.
Computer, what is the current time?
The time is 6:31 p.m.
Computer, what is the current time in London?
In London, it's 11:31 p.m.
I can make my Alexa do like really random shit. Like I can make it say it's like 4 in the afternoon or 3 in the morning or anything like that.
When in a dream there would be somehow...
I can use dream control to completely change that. Also, I can go through my memory. So, for example, I woke up today at approximately 11:58 this morning. I sat in my bed for about 20 minutes.
Okay, yeah, I got it.
So I got up. I went and took a shower. I actually I took my clothes off and got my clothes out for the day. Went and used the restroom, took a shower for about 10-15 minutes. I listened to the radio while I did it. That's what I normally do on my Alexa. I came out. I got dressed. I got a phone call from my grandmother. Went downstairs. And I checked on my laundry real quick. I'm going to have to do laundry this week. And I went downstairs. I ate lunch, orange chicken leftovers from yesterday.
Well, yeah.
Fill up one of my water bottles before eating, sat down, ate that, ate a corn muffin. My mother and grandmother were preparing to leave. They were going to go shopping, do something before she ended up leaving for the day. She's gone by now. Then I went back upstairs and I got my computer with my 2 water bottles. And I actually brought some gummy worms over, ate those. I have a bag of fudge brownie M&Ms over next to me. I was eating some of those too. I was listening to the radio while I was answering Reddit posts. I listened to a couple of YouTube videos while I was answering Reddit posts. I actually started with all my notifications. I had about like 10 or 12, 15 of them. I forget the exact number. I was replying to all the comments and things that I answered from the last couple days. People were replying to me over the past few days. It really varies, but they were all replies I got between 2 this morning and the time I got on my computer, because that's when I went to bed last night. And so I did all that. I got into actually answering Reddit posts. I checked messages. I replied to you. I replied to someone else, verifying all this. And then around 3:45, I replied to you again, saying I just kind of waited. Actually, I don't think I replied. I just checked back. And I checked back at 4. I kept checking every few minutes. I would answer more Reddit posts and check. I was listening to bits of the Jacksonville Jaguars football game. Trevor Lawrence, I really like him. And then I was going to listen to that. And then I finally got messages from you, and I started messaging with you. And then I ended up, you sent me the Google Meet link. The first time I tried to open it, it actually crashed Google Chrome. And so I had to reload Google Chrome, navigate down the page to where I last was when I was actually reviewing Reddit posts. Then get back into my messages, open this link up, go through all the things. And that's when I joined you, and then we had this conversation. So that's all my memory since I last thought I woke up.
Right. Now,
I haven't noticed any time skips, anything out of place, anything odd in any way. No dream signs.
Do you think in a wildest dream, in a crazy dream, in a particularly tricky and elaborate dream, would that be a possibility that we can trick ourselves into doing what you've just done? Because considering how many things are literally possible in a dream, don't you think there could be sometimes some kind of a glitch in this whole?
Here's the thing, there's always something out of place, and dream signs can be sudden or subtle. And I say this like wild transitions, they can be really subtle. For example, I'm highly analytical. One dream sign I noticed in False Awakening is my phone being flipped upside down. All right, it's in the exact same place I left it. It's just flipped over. Or my dad getting up and doing the exact same thing he always does every single day, except 3 hours earlier. That's a dream sign. All right, very specific, highly detailed dream sign. All right, I notice things like that. I can look for anything out of place, anything in any way, and I can retrace my memories. I have a very good grasp on dreaming versus reality.
Nice. Yeah, that's good. That's an interesting skill to have.
Again, because we were just talking about my memory earlier. I can remember things in pretty good detail.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, definitely. It's all connected. It's definitely all connected. Well, listen, I don't mean to stretch too much of your time. I remember I promised I've got to once again apologize. Then I go to you a little bit later. This was
a lot of fun.
Yeah, for sure. Indeed, it's been a lovely conversation. I'm really looking forward to resuming it sometime. Perhaps out of the conversation you could recommend me somebody obviously not nearly as experienced and intelligible about the topic.
There are people who are more experienced than I am.
Yeah. I would love to
do a podcast. I actually interviewed a couple of them on my YouTube channel. If you look for Skyfall interviews and the live streams, I interviewed 2 of the people who were involved in teaching me lucid dreaming, and one person I met at the International Dream Conference. Okay.
Do you think those people will be up for a convo?
I don't know. One of the people is someone I don't personally know. I met at the conference in July, and so I don't really have a good great relationship with them. The other 2 people aren't very active on Reddit. They're on Discord. So if you want to go on Discord, you can go onto the OmniLucid Discord server. It's discord.gg/OmniLucid, and look for Sensei and Hukif, and you can ask them if they would want to.
I'll just keep digging deeper and deeper, and I'm certainly pretty privileged by having this conversation with you. You make an impression of probably the smartest lucid dreamer that I've known, at least up to date.
You definitely should. It would be really cool if you could actually talk to some researchers. They are cool as hell. In fact, look into the group called Tech for Dreaming. There's some really smart people in that group. Tech for Dreaming, you said? Yeah, there's a Discord server for that as well. You can also find them on the YouTube channel. Look for the YouTube channel, Tech for Dreaming. You can listen to some of their things. They get a lot of actual researchers on and talk and do stuff. And I've got to catch up with my own base, because I don't think I qualify for having a conversation with somebody from the academia. But still, it's fun. I really enjoy talking to those people. I don't have any of the degrees that they have, so but I have the knowledge and passion for lucid dreaming, and I really enjoy talking to them. I try to ask detailed questions and try to learn as much as I can from everybody. I think we have just contributed a little smallest bit to the popularity of the activity, and I think we've done a good job, and for that I'm endlessly grateful to you. Now I gotta go out to stretch a little bit. Listen, Ryan, it's been pleasure. Thanks a lot. I want to stay in touch. Perhaps if I get
get back to my active phase of practice in lucid dream, you will certainly be the man to go to.
Well,
Make
I'm
no
around.
mistakes of that. Yeah, so thank you very much. I will also be sure to send you the link after I've dropped it. You know, I'm working currently on the sort of stylistic element of the channel, and I'll be sure to drop you the link.
Awesome.
Endlessly grateful. You're the man. Thanks a lot for what you do, and on behalf of all those people you've helped, thank you a lot.
Thank you, Bohdan. Have a good day.
You too, sir. Thank you. Goodbye.
Good night.
Bye-bye.